All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're talking about the State of the Nation address, varied views here. Let's see what your views are online at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Is the hashtag Daybreak. Let's bring up some of what you're saying, see what your remarks are. Vet Simutai says, I expected State of the Nation address, corruption, 2 billion per day, like Laikipia land grabbing, insecurity, Pandora leaks and offshore banks, collapse of personalized companies. All right. Jacob Abere says His Excellency's State of the Nation was well addressed on his administration's achievements, but likes of Cholet and Aluale don't see it. Remy Butia says President erred in lynching the judiciary. It is the BBI proponents who violated the law and brought the cost of that. The president cannot be both player and umpire in the same match. Well, the biggest problem in Kenya is an economic problem. Okay. Arisa Rogers says we listened and accepted what our president has for us. The president has done a lot for us and scored 70%. Kenyans are testimonials and not politicians. Okay. Let's see what else you're saying. Bobo Tieno Wino says President Kenyatta erred by still mourning about BBI, but he challenged his elder brother Raila Odinga when he said he has been on record of accepting defeat. Okay. Nakoti Mobimba says as long as the president did not address the soaring prices of basic commodities, unga, gas, cooking oil, sugar, then to the common mwananchi's address was null and void. Kent says the State of the Nation address by the president was not realistic and relatable at all. Some of the gain in growth numbers he stated may be facts, as the senator says, but on the ground, I do not feel like the 6th richest country in Africa. All right. Alwale, what is wrong with trying to bring in, I'm trying to skirt around this BBI issue because it's still in court, but it was brought up by the president himself, so we just have no choice but to talk about it. What is wrong about bringing some of the things that both sides agreed that were important to the nation, like devolution, enhancing that money to 35%, through other means like parliamentary means? What is wrong with that?
A lot, because there was opportunity that was lost. As my colleagues have said, a lot more time was wasted on BBI instead of focusing on issues of wananchi, including the one that the government had already committed itself it would do: housing, manufacturing, food and health. They did nothing. Instead, they focused on BBI. So we will not get tired, because apparently they are not about to stop in lying to Kenyans, including Senator Isaiah is telling us about CDF, increment in CDF. You do not have to amend
CDF or
not CDF.
Yeah, it is
money to counties.
The disbursement
money to the share of revenue.
Yes.
Yeah. You do not have to amend the constitution to give counties more. In fact, the way it is worded now, it gives you room to give the current 15%,
minimum,
give 20, give 50, give 70 if you want. So why do you want to amend the constitution when already the constitution gives you room to give 15% and above? Why do you want to amend the constitution? So we cannot support you on that one, and we get disappointed when we see the president sit there on television, State of the Nation address, telling people that it would have increased the allocation to counties by 75%. When all he has to do, he doesn't even have to send any legislation to Parliament. During his budgetary arrangement with the Ministry of Finance, they just say this year we will give 45% or 50% or 55%. They don't have to do anything else. So why do you lie to the public? This issue, again, the president is being supported by many people, and he was lying last night, misleading the country, that there is something they call winner take it all. That they were going to address winner take it all. How can you ever have winner take it all? Once you have two people competing, the one who loses must accept defeat and wait to fight another day. It is as simple as that. How would you package it? Even if you increased the position that they were going to increase, so that 5 critical players would come into play. That would only address, since they were trying to address tribalism, they would only be addressing the appetite for power by 5 tribes. How about the other 37 tribes or so? Where would they go? So when you take a Kikuyu here, a Luo here, a Kalenjin there, a Kamba here, and a Luya here, and because you think you have satisfied them, then all Kenyans are happy, are you saying that it's a crime for one to be born in a small tribe? And these things have been tested. Even in the United States of America, minorities have risen to the top. It is just a few years ago when a man from Siaya here, I think he's a cousin of
Trevor.
the man in yellow shirt, when he was the president of the United States of America. It's not an imagination that Obama was a Luo from Siaya. So what is this big story? Let people learn to develop a national agenda for which they'll be believed enough to be attractive to win the presidential election.
Okay.
That's all.
All right.
Yeah. And then before I conclude, the president also spoke to the issue of Kenya Meat Commission. It was amazing.
Yeah.
The president was telling Kenyans that the commission had been found to be making 8,000 shillings a day. Mm-hmm. And now it was making 1 million shillings. Yeah. If a state commission is making 1 million shillings, we should be saying that the thing has failed. 1 million shillings? There are many businesses in the city here that make 10 million shillings a day.
But in all fairness, from 8,000 to 1 million shillings is an improvement.
And what are the overheads of that commission?
But the basic numbers show, if it is true, 8,000 to 1 million shillings, you don't see any progress in that.
As if that was not disappointing enough, Trevor, he went on and said that because we make the 3 million shillings in a day, he said at the end of the year, we make 3.6 trillion. Whoever was writing that speech to make the figures attractive, surely simple arithmetic, how does 1 million shillings a day translate into 3.6 billion shillings in a year? That is 360 million shillings. How does it become 3.6 billion? So I saw a good member of parliament from Navakholo saying that there were numericals to support this, and I wondered, can this man look at these figures? And when Omatangi, when the president was talking about the 10% increase in the GDP in the first, he was talking about, was it the first quarter or the first half of the year? You cannot support that with what is on the ground. On the ground, we are saying, if the economy is performing like that, where are the jobs? If the economy is performing like that, where is the money with Wanjiku? If the economy is indeed performing that way, then Kenyans must know that the model of trickle down is a disaster. It means the money is just remaining at the top. Just about time next year comes, we'll be given an opportunity, if indeed we are the 6th wealthiest nation in Africa, then we should now bring in the bottom-up model so that this wealth that makes Kenya the 6th richest country in Africa can now be accessed by the people at the base of the pyramid. Okay. On a serious note, it simply means they're using the trickle-down model. The money, the wealth is at the top. It is not reaching Mwananchi.
Okay. Boss, was there nothing good in the BBI that can then be implemented through Parliament?
Remember, what was faulted in BBI was the process.
The process, yes, not the content.
The process was faulted. And even those few things that were in BBI that were necessary could have been done by legislative changes. And I think that is clear, and Senator Halwale has put it rightly.
So
that the minimum is 15%, the maximum can be anything to 100%. Okay. So let us not lie to Kenyans about it. But that said and done is, I will repeat, the president is supposed to confine himself to the provisions of Article 132 of the Constitution and report on 1, international obligations, how Kenya has fulfilled its international obligations, and 2, the progress that has been achieved in realization of national values. And I will pick one. One of the national values is human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality and human rights, and non-discrimination. Let us just go to the issue of human rights and international obligations. Kenya is a signatory to the United Nations Convention on Civil and Political Rights. It is also a signatory to the United Nations Convention on Human Rights. Human rights means having equality. Already our constitution requires that we should have 2/3, not more than 2/3 of one gender in parliament. That has never been adhered to in parliament. So let the president report on human rights. So I wanted him to say the truth, that as president, I have failed to achieve human rights, one of which is the 2/3 gender rule, because it is not a women's issue, it's a human rights issue. It is an international obligation that we have signed and domesticated through our constitution. So why doesn't he come outright on that? Why doesn't he come up and tell us on the issue? He's supposed to report on the rule of law and democracy and participation of the people. I want him to tell us his own record on the rule of law. 8 times the actions of the president have been pronounced by our courts as contravening the law and the constitution, which he swore to uphold, protect, and defend. So if he wants to give us, because, and remember, these are not, he should not give us a state of a nation address on what he feels like telling us. He is confined to what the constitution asks him to do. So let him be able to report his own scorecard if he's being genuine. I want him to say, I established the office of CAS, which was declared unconstitutional. I started Huduma numbers, which was declared unconstitutional. I was asked, I'm required by the law to dissolve parliament for not implementing the 2/3 constitution. I defied the law. That I was directed by the courts and told that the establishment of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services is an illegality and unconstitutional. I disobeyed the law. That is his scorecard. That is a true one, and it's not one that Gladys Boshole has talked to. It is something that has been pronounced and is on record in our courts. And then also, he's like I said, anybody who has done reporting, or when you're making a performance report on yourself, or any organization, everyone who went to business school knows there are certain success indicators. The fact that you have performed an activity is not a result. So the fact that you say that on issues of security, the president reported that he has built hospitals for the military, he has increased the number of police officers, and that he has improved the social welfare generally of police officers. That is not provision of security. It's not a report on security. Those are activities that should lead to actual feeling secure as a Kenyan, right? So the fact that you can hire 1 million police officers, that in itself is not an end in itself. It will not produce security. Okay. It is how I feel as a Kenyan when I'm with him. He goes on to report that one of his other reports on issues of security, he mentions the border dispute with Somalia. He should have reported that under my government, I had a failure in the office of the Attorney General, that they mismanaged that court case before the International Court of Justice, that it is clear that Kenya is a signatory to the United Nations Law of the Sea Convention, which says that in the absence of an agreement between the two countries, equidistance shall be used to define a border. So in fact, Somalia had a point. So instead of chest thumping and saying, I will not cede 1 inch more and making that believe that you have secured Kenya, you should have immediately gone into, go into diplomatic negotiations, and not have submitted yourself to the International Court of Justice when you knew what the result would be at the end of the day. So, and I said, whoever wrote this speech of the president and setting out the progress must think that Kenyans are very foolish people. Okay. Because I needed him to report on his international obligation, Kenya's international obligations. We have failed to obey 2 major conventions. The International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, the International Convention on Human Rights, and we have also failed to follow the International Convention, United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. Okay. By actually defying the decision of the International Court of Justice and confirming it by chest thumping that not an inch less, not an inch more. Okay. So we Kenyans are cleverer than that. Okay. One more time. You can't lie to us. Some of these things are very obvious. Okay. And don't lie to us that the biggest issue facing Kenya is political stability. The biggest issue facing Kenyans is the economy and unemployment. Okay. That is a given. Ask anyone on the street. You do not need me to tell you that. Okay. And the president, as I said, he might live elsewhere other than Kenya. He lives in his own bubble, and so do his advisors and his speech writers. Okay. And Kenyans know and understand. So don't come and lie to us. Okay. I think it's wrong. In fact, I'm offended on behalf of Kenyans.
Trevor, I think because I wanted to apply my mind to some of the few things my brother Senator Halwale spoke about, but just on that one issue, I would not want to be lengthy on the issues raised by Boss on the other matters pertaining to the judiciary. But on this last one, between Kenya and Somalia, I think because Boss is a legal mind and she follows some of these things, it's also good to put the record straight. You know, what really transpired between us as a country and the International Court of Justice and Somalia. And it is on record there, Trevor, for purposes of Kenyans to know that indeed Kenya had applied to the International Court of Justice during the process that they delay the hearing and writing of a judgment or a conclusion until Kenya gets representation and they prepare themselves to forward their case for consideration. And what happened was that although leave had been granted earlier, one time that Kenya would prepare itself to go and present its case, a further application was done by the government to allow time. And this is what happens if you're talking about justice. If you're accused, Trevor, in a court, and you say, I have not had time with my lawyer, we have not discussed, or rather have not prepared my defense, give me time so that I can come. And when you're considering the merit of both cases, then you have my part of the story. But then that application and request by Kenya was denied. And so the consideration of that judgment was in the absence of a defense by Kenya. And that is how that decision was arrived at. And that does not amount to justice. And so I do not think, in my view, I do not think that the request by Kenya was either frivolous or superfluous or inadmissible. Yeah. It should have been allowed that we are able to file our defense, we are heard, and then when they make a judgment, they'll be saying this is the way it is. But I also think that indeed, for the president of a nation in such circumstances, what he would be doing is standing by, because actually the words of the president were clear. He said, not an inch less, but not an inch more either. I mean, clearly signifying that he's not aggressing. He's not out there to go and rabble-rouse so that he can go and get more territory. So, so I think for purposes of where we stand as a nation, that's important. But allow me to just have my word on this issue of what you've talked about, the minimum 15%. And we are saying that this is there in law. And you do not require a constitutional amendment to give more. Now, the mischief in this, Trevor, and for purposes of Kenyans to understand when we have this debate, why it is necessary to have that amendment in law is because when you have applied and said that, yes, you can give 15% or more, you are reliant on the goodwill of the person sitting in the office of the president for the more. And what we were trying to cure by insisting, because I'm a strong advocate, I'm the one who fought a big battle on the one man, one vote, one shilling in Parliament. I have been with this gentleman across the table there, Boni Halwale, on fights to ensure that counties get more money. And every time there is an excuse not to give counties money, it will be applied. So what we wanted to ensure is that there is a floor within which you cannot go below. And so the floor now is at 15%. So you raise the floor to 35%, such that you do not need to rely on the goodwill of the person who sits in that office to give them that 20% or that 2%. It is there in our constitution. And so, yes, it is doable. Somebody who is sitting in office now can say, we even give 60%, but it depends on how he's feeling that morning. If tomorrow he wakes up with a bad mood, he will say, go back to the 15. So can we have then that 35? That is the law. And so I think that would explain. And then, Trevor, on this issue of the winner-take-all, is it an issue that we would need to address or not? And unless we ourselves really want to be very dishonest, because this debate has been based largely on what happened in this country, not when Uhuru was president, not even when he was a contestant himself for the presidency. He wasn't. Because most of this is picked from the events that we saw in the year 2007, 2008, and the violence that rocked this country and the losses of lives and property that we went through. And remember, we had commissions that were hearing this. We had teams, we had parliament and our committees investigating. And the results have been out all the time with the same report. Our biggest problem, our tribalism. Our biggest problem, ourselves, our communities. This is where we belong. So the question of how do we resolve this? And you would look at, Trevor, if you allow, what you would call in statistics proximate cause. And you'd say, how nearer or nearest would you get to what you want to get? So when we bedevil that you're trying to have 5 seats, and let's clear Kenyans' minds, because this is the truth, that even the creation of those 5 seats at that time would not have meant an extra expense to the government. It was really just a question of renaming these positions that we have of majority leader, minority leader, and other whatevers. It was not going to be an extra expense. But with that shuffling, what happens is that politics, as we know it, is a lot by perception. It is perception. And that is that's a trait that's known. So if you have what you have currently, Trevor, if you look at the political formations of today, we have started to form coalitions. We have a coalition now called OCA.
Yeah.
We have Raila Odinga is going around trying to form coalitions with people. The Deputy President, William Ruto, is going around the country trying to rally people together. At the end of the day, you know how this country is going to move on politically?
Yeah.
Is that we are going to be ruled by a union of individuals and minds and parties and so on, because no one is able to do what was done before Moi. No one person in this country is capable now of galvanizing this country to go into an election and vote without dispute like we had in 2007. That's why the way of building those bridges, the way of putting people together, the way of even what Raila Odinga says when he goes around Azimio la Umoja, what the Deputy President says when he goes around himself, that he wants to bring all communities together. It is the same story. Same story. And so, as I conclude, Trevor, so when we speak about those 5 positions that were being created, you would probably say you're not just creating them for Mr. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, but supposing you had these coalitions, maybe 4 or 5 of them, and you represent at least to the closest interests that are within those people, then you have minimized the possibility that you would have conflict at the end of a process of election. And I've used the word minimized because we have to be truthful in the debate that we have. Now, lastly, Trevor, so in this question of when the president was talking about, for example, how does KMC relate to as an example? Yeah. Because it is not everything, but it was an example as to, how are we looking at? And you just need to listen to livestock farmers and the story they have, because I do a lot of activities around Kajiado and other places, and you will hear this word, that we are better off. And that's the key thing. It is not that they're best, but they're better off than they were. And that is how you make progress. That's how you judge whether you're moving forward. And so,
answer something for us urgently, because you need to correct to Kenyans. The president said that KMC is making 1 million a day. 1 million times 365 days, assuming that they work on Sunday and Saturday, is 365 million shillings. How did it become 3.6 billion
shillings?
Just correct that for me.
Let me finish. Yeah.
But I'm not here to do, arithmetic and calculations and justify numbers. I was not writing the speech.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is I'm applying my mind to the bigger cause, to the bigger aspirations of this country. And when you play your role as a leader in this country, what vision should you be seeing? What message should you be passing to Kenyans? And so I was just saying, for example, when you look at the invocation of the KMC example, is judged by what the folks tell you out there who do livestock farming. So I mean, they say, yes, it was worse, now we are better, but it can even be more better than it is. That's what I'm saying. So lastly, Trevor, allow me to talk about this question of, do we expect, for example, when you talk about statistics, to expect the same to be reflected in how the people feel? And I talked about this a bit earlier. Before, economists in the world have been using a measure called GDP to decide how do countries feel, or how do countries relate in terms of progress. That has been since revised. Actually, most economists now have resorted to using what I told you earlier, is the happiness index of individuals, to see, because concrete and mortar and whatever may not necessarily make your people happy, or rolling machines, but as a measure, as a reflection of how the economy fares and how your people feel, are people happy? And I said, yesterday's report, in my view, is not a measure of happiness. Of course, Kenyans should be happy. But this is a report, so when you see numbers that says that Kenya is the 6th largest economy in Africa, it may not necessarily mean that Kenyans are the 6th happiest people. Of course, that's where we would want to be. Okay. Do we address ourselves about the dignity of our people? Yesterday, I heard the president speaking about the effect of providing water in our slums. And Trevor, I am a living witness myself. I have worked in these slums in Nairobi. I undertook a project to build lavatories for the dwellers of Mukuru here near South Bay, and also Mukuru kwa Jenga. And what I saw with my own eyes, I will never forget. I have been there. I have stayed with those people. My friend, you enter into a place where somebody lives, and you find that that guy lives with a family of 5 in a one room that is divided by Manila paper. And he sleeps with his wife here, his children here. They use a toilet within the same house is the same toilet. And at night is when you see these activities, sometimes even in the daytime, of those flying toilets. He was speaking about going to those people and providing them with proper sanitation, water, for that matter. And so I do not think that you would judge and say that what they have done in terms of giving those people dignity, minimum dignity, human dignity, is something that the country cannot talk about. Okay. I just want to summarize by saying, I know and I feel what Kenyans are saying, that we are not where we would want to be. We want to be better off, we want to feel good, we want to see real progress, but we judge that progress based on and compared to the circumstances that we have been in. We've just been through Corona, Trevor, and it's problems.
Okay.
So compared to where we want to go, I believe with positivity, agreeing that yes, those could be few gains, we can do better and we aspire more.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm giving you a bit of more time because you're vastly outnumbered. You're running mid-sentence apologies. And so, Alwale, you see, how would you rate the Jubilee government's performance on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being the lowest, 10 being the maximum.
Can you allow me to rebut something?
Yes.
Just a little. My brother, this thing of winner take it all.
Yeah.
Supposing you introduce all those 5 positions under the current arrangement where the rest is between the deputy president and the former prime minister.
Yeah.
The former prime minister will have his designated beneficiaries of those slots, those 5 slots, as he goes into the competition. Similarly, the deputy president. And when either wins, all those positions will be taken by his own lineup. And the guy who has been defeated, his lineup and himself will have lost. If you wanted us to believe you, then you would have been at least more innovative by telling us that in the presidential election, the person who wins becomes president. And the person who is runner-up becomes prime minister. And the third person becomes first deputy president or first. That kind of thing would then be speaking to winner take it all not being applicable. But the way you are proposing, you will still have a set of people who have lost and a set of people who have won.
But because I didn't want to interrupt you,
Yes.
and you can just answer to the same. If you apply then what you're saying,
Yes.
you're forgetting fundamentals in the proposals that were there. Remember that the proposal that was there in the BBI is that the person who garners the most becomes prime minister in terms of representation in parliament. You cannot predetermine that. You cannot have somebody who is handpicked and you're saying that this is the person who is going to be having the most representatives in parliament. That's a result of the election. So the others would be nominated, and I would agree with you that some of them would, but some of those you can predetermine. So it is still proximately, and that's why I used the word proximate, that it is closer to the ideal, but not the ideal. You know, my brother Bonnie, it is not perfection. You can't argue it to be perfection, but it is forward steps towards a better day.
Mm-hmm. So on a score of 1 to 10,
yes,
I would give them 4 out of 10 for the following reasons. The first one is that the president did not convince us yesterday why he is so obsessed with the military people doing civilian work, up to and including allowing a soldier to sit in cabinet when he knows that for somebody to sit in cabinet, that person must be appointed by him and get approval by the majority of the members of parliament. Number 2, he scores badly because yesterday he did not say anything about corruption. I think he was being clever because it is on record that members of his family and close friends benefited from the corruption at KEMSA.
And the Pandora's papers.
Yes?
And the Pandora's papers.
Yes. He cleverly, thank you, he cleverly avoided the issue of corruption because he knew that when members will be debating this paper, they will now bring in the issue of the Pandora papers. In Chile, where the president was also found to be mentioned in Pandora papers, actually the guy was impeached. In Kenya, as far as Wamatangi is concerned, Wamatangi, you members of parliament, and my sister boss, at least do something about it. Say something on the floor of the house about Pandora papers. The money that is in Pandora papers is not money that was earned. It is money which was siphoned from the public coffers. And the more we keep quiet, the more our country is said to be the 6th richest, when actually that wealth that makes us the 6th richest for Matangi ends up in accounts of senior people in Dubai, in Hong Kong, and British Virgin Islands.
Even then, you're aware that when the papers came out, there was a rider, that there was no evidence of how that money was acquired.
Are you real?
That was the rider. That was how it came out. The difference between myself and you,
I see.
you're a politician. I'm just stating what was out there. What was out there is that there was no evidence of wrongdoing.
Well, that is for you, but because I can't force you to differentiate between fact and fiction. If you're assuming what was reported about the Pandora Papers was fiction, that's why I'm asking you, are you real?
That is not what I said. They said there was no evidence of their money being acquired illegally.
I'm giving this guy...
So there has to be a full investigation towards this. You said that money was siphoned.
Yes.
How you came to that conclusion is what I'm wondering.
I'm giving these guys... It was siphoned. If it wasn't, how come it's only people who are politically correct who have those accounts? How come Sholei, who worked herself, almost broke her back in the judiciary when she was working there, she doesn't have such an account? It's because she was not stealing. I am giving them 4 out of 10 because of the issue of human rights. It is a shame that in Kenya people are still being abducted and they end up being reported to have been executed.
And Kamata Friday.
Yes. People were arrested on Friday just to be denied their rights under the Constitution.
Okay.
We must give them that poor score. And then finally, we are giving them this 4% because of the weight of the public debt. I'm not sure that the executive is asking Parliament to lift the debt ceiling from the 9 trillion so that they can borrow even more. Whereas we support borrowing, but the fact that there are no projects to support the money that was previously borrowed, then we are not comfortable that the debt ceiling should ever be lifted.
Okay. Yeah. When you say giving them 4 out of 10, I'm assuming you mean the executive, the deputy president and the president.
Yes, the deputy president and the president.
So they have both collectively failed.
Can I finish my statement?
Yes.
Yes. The executive means the deputy president and the president. But you know very well that from the time of handshake, the deputy president in office who discharges the function of the deputy president is not William Ruto.
So if they've collectively failed...
has assumed the role of the deputy president without having won an election. In fact, maybe people should be swearing themselves in illegally the way Raila did for them to be getting an opportunity to get a handshake.
So if they collectively failed, Boni, and that's what I'm wondering, if they collectively failed and you give them a 4 out of 10, how then do you convince Kenyans that the best candidate is the deputy president?
He's not part of it. The 4 out of 10 is the work being done by Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. Who doesn't know in this country that the deputy president has been set aside? His duties were given temporarily to, what is the name, to Dr. Matiang'i, and thereafter Raila. They're the ones who have been doing it.
Okay.
The deputy president is...
Let me give my score.
Yeah. What is your scorecard?
My score, I will give them, I'm talking about the State of the Nation address.
Yeah.
I'll give him 2.
Okay.
2 because he has earned the 2% as a result of 20% as a result of giving a chronological narrative of what has transpired during his 10-year presidency. He loses marks because he has many inaccuracies in his report. But also, he has lost a lot of marks because he did not focus on what the law tells him to report on. Most importantly, we wanted a report on democracy and the rule of law. And I've explained the many instances that the president has been declared to have contravened the law. Remember that the president, his first action as president is to take up the Bible and swear to uphold, defend, and protect the Constitution. he has continued as late as a few weeks ago to contravene the Constitution by setting up or allowing his cabinet to set up an illegal task force called the Multi-Something Agency on Election Preparedness. Again, he's contravening the law. I want to inform those advisors of the President and the Attorney General that there is a methodology of having a task force to do that. Under Section 34 of the Judicial Service Act, there is the National Council for Administration of Justice. The CJ chairs it. The Chief Registrar is the secretary to that council. I have served in that position, and so I know this very well. The Law Society sits in it, a representative of the private sector, the PS who is head of public service or secretary to the cabinet also sits on it, someone, the PS in charge of gender, the PS in charge of environment, land, and also a person dealing with human rights and so on. And the National Council for the Administration of Justice is supposed to deal with how the administration of justice can be made to be efficient and efficient and also timely and so on. If the Chief Justice wanted to have an issue dealing with the election preparedness, then they would do it under the National Council for Administration of Justice. Another person who sits in the National Council for Administration of Justice is, and the law says, the person in command of the National Police Service. Which means if they need to deal with security issues, it is actually the Inspector General or a person appointed in writing by the Inspector General to go and sit in the National Council for Administration of Justice, not establish another task force.
Okay.
So now, having this task force, another illegal task force similar to BBI, is one trying to interfere with free and fair elections and credible elections. Kibisho, Matiang'i, and I don't know who else from the Ministry of Interior have no business setting up another task force. There's only one such council or task force, if you want to call it, that is allowed under the Judicial Service Act, the National Council for Administration of Justice. So I would say that IEBC rightly pulled out. Because even in this, IEBC would go and report, first of all, go and report on what they require the administration of justice to do in order to help them implement the election operations plan. And the rest would just kick in automatically. So all IEBC has to do is produce the election operations plan, put figures to it, give it to the National Treasury, present it before the relevant committee in Parliament. Also, they can serve it upon, they can send it to the National Council for Administration of Justice, and the Chief Justice, as chair, and through the secretary, would admit those requirements under the election operations plan to become an agenda item in the National Council for Administration of Justice. So the president has refused to obey the rule of law, and he did not also report on the rule of law. That is his biggest failing on the State of the Nation address.
So this
want to say about
this
the
2 out of 10 is a Jubilee failure in your assessment?
Yes.
And that was part of what you were part of before you decided to move to UDA.
I think you must be holding Uhuru Kenyatta's brief. You're defending him on Pandora Papers.
I am not defending
You're trying to defend him also on the issue
I am just stating facts,
that you want to apportion blame to the Deputy President.
I am stating facts.
Let me explain.
Who forms the Jubilee government?
The Deputy President, rightly so, assumes and accepts the successes of the Jubilee government between 2013 and March 2018. The infrastructure and the road network, yes, he can take credit for that, and so can Uhuru Kenyatta. For the TVETs, the Deputy President can take credit for that, and so can Uhuru Kenyatta.
The borrowing,
in fact, the Deputy President, hold on. In fact, the Deputy President actually was the one who started TVETs when he was Minister of Education. So he can, rightly so, the rural electrification, he can take credit for that. The changes in the education sector, which started when he was the Minister of Education, under Kibaki, that's when free education, and the process of starting to have 100% transition to the to the secondary schools was started by the deputy president and continued when he was deputy president under the Jubilee government. Yes, he can take credit for that. But after the handshake,
you're not talking about the debt. Did you start borrowing?
I am going to get to the debt. You've said it. Hold on, I will get there. So he then, in March 2018, we had the handshake. Everything about the Big Four was completely forgotten, and they began to focus on BBI. Our economy started having problems, and that is why they ended up still coming back to Parliament. At that time, it was after the handshake that they came back to Parliament to increase the debt ceiling to 9 trillion shillings. They also are now in an attempt to go back to Parliament for an increase to 12 trillion shillings. Anything that happened post-March 2018, I don't think it is fair for William Ruto to be asked to take any responsibility for. He was sidelined from government. We have Matiang'i, we have the military guys who are running all these issues instead of the deputy president. The constitution says the president shall manage government with the assistance of the deputy president. He chose, and he's allowed to do that, not by the constitution but by his own personality, to decide that he wants to use Matiang'i, he wants to use the Ministry of Interior, he wants to use the military, and completely ignore his deputy. That is a fact that is known in this country. And you also know that for a fact, for those reasons, all of us, many of us who are in Jubilee, have exited from Jubilee, and we are now forming a new political vehicle which will return back these aspirations of Kenyans into our system. Lastly, that issue that you say, because if you get 5 people to have positions, that they will be shared prosperity among Kenyans. If you look at what the UDA is doing, we are mobilizing Kenyans across economic interest groups. So that when we talk about tea farmers, it ranges from central Kenya up to Kericho. When we talk about pastoralists, they run from Turkana to northeastern to North Rift Valley. That is the way we should be trying to mobilize Kenyans, not by giving a few positions to a few individual moments. That constitutional moment they are talking about was to provide positions for individuals, but not, it was not a constitutional moment.
I've run out of time. Mometangi, now you could conclude this conversation for us. Can you separate these two? First, let's start with your scorecard, the Jubilee performance, and then you give us whether you can separate these two.
Why don't I finish with the scorecard? Because I'm able to explain my scorecard. You know, to have a scorecard, you must have a marking scheme, and so you know, because my colleagues have given their scorecard, maybe they. But first I wanted to find out from Bonnie Halwale, what does the writing behind your T-shirt mean? Your shirt mean? I'm saying Shindi Shund. What does that mean?
you mean you're able to see through me?
Yes, I can see through you. Well, I'm saying behind you some interesting writing there. Is it a threat to peace? Because I'm saying Shindi Shund.
It's the name of my grandson.
Is it a gift you got from your grandson?
My grandson is a small boy of 1 year old. Yes.
So you're celebrating him?
Yes.
That's or are you cheering yourself on in the upcoming battle for governorship of Kakamega? It sounds like a
rallying call.
Like a rallying call, as Trevor says, that you know you will win.
If you come to Kakamega, Shindu is a big thing.
Yes. Now, anyway, Trevor.
Yes.
On the issue of corruption, I think I have been consistent on this, and I still maintain my position on the issue of corruption. That one, I agree. I believe that corruption is one of the major issues that this country must address itself to properly and entirely, such that we can have the aspirations we intend to have as a country, and short of that, we will always fail. We have to. But I'm also consistent on one thing, that I do not think that political leaders, politicians, are the best people in this country to lead the fight against corruption. Because they can't. They cannot. Because majority of our political leaders fall short of the glory when it comes to the question of corruption. And so we shouldn't. Secondly, You know, one of the biggest problems we have had in the fight against corruption in this country is the misapplication and misuse on the fight against corruption, depending on what is convenient at the time when you're talking about corruption. And no one can claim not to be a victim either way, Trevor, because we must tell the truth. Such that even next time when whoever forms the next government, when they make up their minds that they're going to fight corruption in this country, they know whom to give the leeway and the tools and the authority to fight corruption. If you ask political leaders here, everybody has been a victim. I have been. Ask Boss Shale here. She has been. When she was in judiciary, she was being, and it was unfortunate. You heard now, they're talking about Pandora's box, Pandora Papers, same thing. I mean, it's a story that is spun at the time when you want to aim your barrel at particular people, and this muddies the water on the fight against corruption. Remember, I've been on record here as having said, Trevor, the time when we have had a lot of discussion that the deputy president has issues of corruption and blah, and I said, if they are there, get them, put them on the table, and take them to a court of law, and then they can be, because that is the way you address corruption. Remember, last week we talked about the leaks that were here on Justice Chitembwa. The leaks by a former governor, Nairobi. And I said the same thing, Trevor. The best thing that the former governor would have done is made a report to the police, have those investigated, and then you can have conclusion. And so when we question about KEMSA, when we question about all the other scandals, what we are saying is that the same game that is played everywhere all the time around the clock, such that when you want to either sink somebody's political career, when you want to win, depending on your convenience, then you can apply that battle, yeah, or that word. It is only an honest, sincere fight against corruption in this country that will rid us of that particular menace. And there's no other way. Otherwise, as long as it continues to be a political tool, a tool of convenience, then we will never get anywhere with it. And we have to state facts, because it is our people who suffer. It's Kenyans who suffer. If you hear now what the example that was being given yesterday about the Kenya Meat Commission, because I have been to Athi River myself before, and you find people used to come there, give the animals for slaughter, and then they camp around the lodgings and hotels in Athi River for a week or 2 or 3, waiting to see how they're going to get their fare back home and go and wait for their payments from Northeastern, where they came to supply their cattle. And this money is being eaten here. I mean, who doesn't know the kind of trouble Kenyans have gone through, yeah, at every level, because our money is stolen. You know, and when the president was speaking about the billions stolen, he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. We lose a lot of money through corruption. And so immediately we resolve that, then we can say that we'll start to find meaningful progress. So if you ask me how do I make my scorecard, I would make my scorecard first by asking myself, from all the things that were listed as to where we have made substantial gains, what should we focus on doing more? Yeah. Do you know, Trevor, it is not acceptable, even at this time, that a population of 50 million plus people in this country, we are talking about an enrollment with NHIF of 10.5 million people. Yes, yeah, it is progress, but it is below par. Because if you look at our aspiration to get to universal health care for our people, and that is one of the biggest problems. When, as a political leader myself, I always have to deal with, and all of us here, yeah, when you go to the rurals, the first thing that you deal with is people coming to you for harambes. Yeah. And 70% of harambes are about people asking you to help them to foot off hospital bills, okay, or to travel to India. Now you know. Okay. Now, so what you would be addressing is, if you want to attain universal health care, yeah, how do you help to ensure that our people get enrolled with NHIF? Within, yeah, NHIF, there is minimum corruption itself, such that then this can be a reality. And so I just want to say that if we reflect and focus on what we need to do more, if you look at our education sector, yes, we have attained almost 100% transition to Form 1, but is that enough? It isn't. If you look at the top level, what does our statistics say about the number of people with degrees? Remember, we were having a discussion here the other day. Should people be barred from running for member of parliament because they are not graduates?
Yeah.
And the statistics are such that 1 out of 10 Kenyans are the only ones who have a degree. That is not sufficient.
Okay.
And so, if we look at where we can build on our strengths, I believe that we would make progress. Lastly, is on this question of would we fail ourselves sitting here as politicians with Boss or Bonnie Halwale authoritatively and properly say that you can draw a line and say that between here and here is where you can relieve the Deputy President of his responsibility in terms of the management of the affairs of Jubilee. And I will tell you, Trevor, and Kenyans, there's some of these things that we have to allow the principals to do themselves. You know, for example, allow the Deputy President himself to say it, that it is from this point to this point, and this point to this point.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, because yesterday I was with him and we were together with the president himself there.
Yeah.
And even sometimes when they sit together there, you find that their body language, they joke, they were laughing, they were doing whatever.
Yeah.
There are things probably they say or they would say beyond what the ear of Halwale or beyond what the ear of Shole would know. But in terms of taking responsibility for the oath that they both took, that is their business. Do you know what history does? History judges you correctly for what you have said and what you've done. And I believe moving forward until the end of this term, the two of them will owe Kenyans that responsibility to fulfill what they both took office for, whichever way they do. Okay. You cannot say that this one is not guilty and this one is not guilty.
All right.
You know, when we are talking about taking over of, for example, responsibilities in our administration, you say you take over assets and liabilities.
Okay.
And so when the two of them took that responsibility, and as they come to the close of it, they own both the assets or the good and the liabilities, and that is the shortcomings.
All right.
And they need to make good so that Kenyans can judge the administration that they took oath for in the right way.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we run out of time. Thank you so much for making time here for Daybreak. Let's take the tweets really quick before we rally this to the end. Odongo Rolex says, Trevor, ask Boss and Halwale what they have done to help the president in pushing this nation ahead if their leader DP even skipped to close the Devolution Conference event. Kenyans are clever and we are watching. You wait and see. Okay. Let's see. Engineer Lazaro says infrastructure. We can count state-of-the-art roads, ultra-modern cancer screening machines in our hospitals and rural electrification. Very unfortunate for people like Halwale and Boss to oppose everything just for the sake of opposition. Okay. Huza says, what is the state of the nation? Reading from the medical perspective, it is critically recovering. Judicially, it is on trial. Parliamentary pending. Economical deficient and structurally developing. Okay. Jenga Wakungu says Gladys should be the presidential advisor. The State House Kenya is concluding his second term, but what makes him not to play what his administration's achievement for 10 years has been? Just because Deputy President isn't in good terms with his boss, his diehards mustn't criticize everything. Sharif Peter says, even after the long speech with choreographed development achievements, still ordinary Kenyans are struggling for medication. Kenyans are sleeping hungry. Kenyans have died of hunger. 70% of educated youth are unemployed. Industries have closed down. Workers have been retrenched. Flavian says the government doesn't need BBI to increase the percentage of shareable revenue. Devolve more functions to the counties and money will follow those functions. BBI is, as it is then, was dead on arrival. Nothing can be done to resuscitate it. All right. That's where we leave it for now. Thank you so much for making time here. Willis Raburu is up next in just a bit.